Has the fear of criticism ever stopped you from putting yourself out there or going after what you really want? Oh man, can I relate? The fear of criticism kept me playing small for years. And nothing that you see today, as far as the Powerhouse Women event or community or this podcast, would exist if had I kept listening to that fear. So today I wanted to share with you a few of the things that have helped me get out of my own way when it comes to the fear of criticism that I think will really help you too. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I am recording this on the heels of a big trip that we just took where we had our very first international Powerhouse Women event. We just came back from the Dominican Republic where our girl Emil hosted us. And not only did we do an event in another country, it was in another language and we had to translate it into English. Let me tell you, I'm sitting here just as normal as they come. I am no different than you. And no matter what people see on social media, none of this will ever feel normal to me. And I kind of love that because the topic that we're going to talk about today ties into all of this. And no matter what you see on social media, yes, it looked glamorous. It was so much fun. I still am figuring all of this out as we go. I just keep saying yes to opportunities that present themselves and then figure it out as I go. But it wasn't that long ago that I wasn't saying yes to things. I wasn't moving forward because I was so stuck in fear. Now, on the surface, what it looked like was I would say things like, I'm too busy. I just need to learn a couple more things before I can move forward and start that podcast or write that blog. I was using excuses that sounded really legit on the surface because I did have a full life and it was very easy to convince myself that I just didn't have time or my schedule was too busy. But deep down, it was really fear. Fear was stopping me from taking that next step forward, putting myself out there and doing anything that was leading me to my bigger purpose. And I've shared this before. If you've listened to episode 1, you heard a little bit more of the backstory. On the surface, it looked 5 years ago like I had it all together and I had a great life. But deep down, I knew that there was more. I knew that I had more to give and I was operating at maybe 60% of my potential. And underneath all of that, when I got honest about what was stopping me from stepping into the bigger things and finding whatever that 100% of my own potential was, the biggest fear that I had was of criticism. And if you listen to the solo episode from last week, we talk a little bit about people-pleasing tendencies. This is obviously tied in with that. A lot of where my people-pleasing tendencies came from was this fear of being criticized. And it sounds silly to say out loud, but I'm willing to talk about this because I know so many other men and women deal with this, and it's keeping so many of us from stepping forward and creating the things that we really feel we're being called to create. And we're not doing our job as Powerhouse Women and helping you get out of your own way if we just sit back and pretend like we've got it all together. We never struggle with this. And this, for me, has been a huge, huge part of my journey, overcoming this fear of criticism. Now, what I want to tell you is that the fear itself has never totally gone away. And I think like most fear, regardless of what it is for you, maybe you don't really struggle with the fear of criticism. Maybe you struggle with something else. But for me, this has always been a big one, and it's never totally gone away, just like the what do I want to say? Just like the opportunity, the potential for someone to criticize me will never go away. The more I'm creating content, the more I'm showing up and showing up as my authentic self, there's always going to be the potential that someone won't like it. But what I will say is that I've found a whole lot more freedom around this, and I've been able to lessen the grip that this fear has on my life. Even though I still feel it, I still experience it, and deep down, if I'm honest, I would love if everyone just always loved everything that we do, every event, every podcast, but that's just not the case. In fact, it's kind of ironic that I'm recording this episode today, and last week I noticed that someone left a 1-star review on the podcast. So I consider that now we're legit. We have our first 1-star review, a whole lot more 5-star reviews. So don't worry, we're fine. But it was interesting to me because that's really how I even was able to process, like, seeing that so different than it would have been, say, 3 to 5 years ago, when that maybe would have had me question what I'm doing, had me wonder, okay, do I suck? Does this podcast not resonate? I know that this now is part of the journey, and the more that I've practiced moving forward in the face of this fear of criticism, the easier it has gotten. So now, I've shared this before. For me, this has literally just been in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, I really started to get sick of not moving forward. I got sick of playing at that 60% and was willing to get honest about how much this fear of criticism was running the show. And once I did that, there were 2 things that I really have been able to identify that have helped me move forward in spite of this fear of being criticized or fear of what other people are going to think. And I wanted to share those 2 with you today because maybe you're like me. Maybe you're sitting there right now and fear is preventing you from writing a blog, starting your own podcast, or publishing a social media post. Sometimes the fear of criticism stopped me from doing even the small things like that. So here are the 2 things that when I look back have really helped me most get out of my own way and start moving forward, even though this fear is always there. It's always in the back of my mind and still shows up. It's gotten less and less and less because of these 2 things. So the first one, and I want to preface this by saying, I always knew this logically, but I didn't really get it. The fact that not everyone will like what I have to say or resonate with the message that I share, and that is okay. So, there are countless social media quotes, you name it. I probably have Pinterest boards full of things that, talk about this, but I didn't truly embody it and truly get it until this experience that I had right before my book, Powerhouse Women, was about to be released. And for me, the journey of writing the book, again, if you listen to episode 1, you heard a little bit more of the story, how that experience really was the one where I leaned full on into everything I was most afraid of. And the fear of criticism was the biggest one. I was less worried, about people not buying the book or it being a total flop. That didn't scare me at all. In fact, my biggest fear was that people would actually read it and have like a judgment about it. So silly, I know, but that was real for me. And then right before the book came out, I think that this was truly divine intervention and such a gift because I got to experience how this truth that not everyone is going to resonate with what I have to say and that is okay. So what happened was a speaker and author that I truly love, have followed her content for years, have read her other books, listened to meditations that she did. Literally, I consume so much of this woman's content, webinars, you name it, and love everything that she's talked about. And then her new book came out. I even got to go and see her speak in Phoenix and loved her talk, leading up to the book. And then when I sat down to read the actual book, the content just did not resonate. It was one of those books where it was almost like I was having a hard time reading more than 2 pages because it just wasn't really landing. And it was interesting that this happened when it did, when my book, Powerhouse Woman, was about to be released, because it had me stop and realize, okay, wow, I love this woman. I love the work that she is doing in the world. I believe so much in her message. And this book right now doesn't resonate with me. It wasn't like, oh, this book is terrible. She sucks. She's the worst. I just didn't resonate with it. And it sounds silly, but in that moment was when I really got this first lesson that not everyone will always resonate with what you have to say. And even people who have a big audience are going to have those that do not resonate, or even on the far end of the spectrum, don't love what they're doing or saying. So for me, realizing that, okay, I loved this woman, I loved what she stood for, and this message didn't resonate for me. In fact, I've never gone back to read the book. I gave it away, I gave it to a friend, and I know plenty of other people have loved it, but for me, it just didn't resonate. So that experience was really powerful to get on a whole new level, that there are always going to be things that are for us and things that are not. And the more content we put out, the more chance that it's going to be for some people and not for others. So kind of expanding on that, as you get clearer and clearer about who your message is for, you get clearer and clearer about who it is not for. And I've had plenty of opportunities as I started to step into the book and the event and the podcast. I've had plenty of opportunities to realize that if I try to make this for everybody, it's probably not going to resonate the same way that if I speak to the woman who I know I want to reach and impact, and then just understand that there will be plenty more who don't resonate with our message. And again, I don't love that that's the case. I would really love to be able to impact all the people. But at the end of the day, that's why your message is so important, because certain people are going to resonate with you more than they've ever resonated with another person. So even if you have people you look up to and you love the content that they're putting out, not everyone is going to resonate with them. In fact, I think about this as like a mental workout for reframing this fear that I've had is, this is so silly. I'm like embarrassed to admit this, but I will go onto Amazon or iTunes, you name it, and I will actually go to people that I love their content, or just people who are really popular. Maybe they have a huge platform. If you think about people like Rachel Hollis, or people who have really stepped into their bigger purpose in a huge way in the last few years, and you look at the negative reviews that have been left for their books or their podcasts, there are negative reviews, and some of them are just like downright mean. I don't know why people feel the need to leave like scathing comments, but it helped me realize that, wow, okay, people who have a big platform and who are making a big impact sometimes are having just as many people. Now, it's usually not as many people. If you really think about it, they're making a way more of a positive impact than they are a negative one, but the bigger someone's platform, the bigger the target, that others are not going to resonate with what they say. So it took for me that whole experience with the book of the woman who I really respect and admire, and not resonating with it, for me to get that it's okay if people pick up my book and don't resonate, or listen to this podcast and don't resonate with it. So if that's you, and if you're listening to this episode for the first time and you're like, this is crap, I don't like this, then I send you so much love, and it is okay. I'm like really working on this muscle. Okay, so the second thing that has helped me, and this probably more than anything else, has helped me move past just this fear of criticism is, and this was like a truth bomb, that listening to the fear of criticism, I had to realize that that was all about me. That had nothing to do with a bigger purpose or who I wanted to serve. I was just sitting with how I was going to feel, or concerned about would it hurt my feelings, or, I don't know, like how it would affect me if criticism came my way. That was nothing about who I was meant to serve. And this moment of clarity actually came to me while I was writing. And there were certain moments, those of you who are, writers, content creators, maybe you have these moments too, where it was like a day where the inspiration was kind of just flowing and the words were coming really easily. So I was sitting down and writing, and there were certain times where a sentence would come out on the page, and it was almost like I would look around like up to the sky and wonder, okay, wait, where did that sentence just come from? Like almost to the point where I felt like it wasn't my words that were coming out onto the page, but it was coming from somewhere else, a higher power. And this sentence came out in this piece about overcoming our fears and about just getting out of our own way. And the sentence had something to do with, was I more concerned about impressing people or making an impact? Because when I was more concerned about avoiding criticism, or you could even say impressing people, looking good, I was withholding information that could potentially make a positive impact on others. Even like just sharing this topic today, right? If I were concerned about looking good, I would never come on here and share with you my deepest, darkest fears and insecurities. But I know I'm not the only one who has them. And so the more I put myself out there, the more I could potentially help someone else, but also realizing that it absolutely could bring more criticism. But I think all in all, what I came to realize is there's just as much of a chance for criticism with me playing small. There's less of a chance, of course, if I'm not putting a message out there, not starting a blog. But there came a point when I talked about that feeling like I was playing at about 60% of my potential. There came a point where that discomfort of playing at 60% and knowing that there was more was way more uncomfortable than the possibility of putting myself out there and having someone not like it. That fear of discomfort, there was this switch. There was this switch to where I realized in that moment I was putting way more emphasis on impressing someone than I was about making an impact, and that just was not okay. And that realization is what ultimately set me free and is still the thing that I come back to when I realize that this fear of criticism, maybe for doing the next big thing or putting the next podcast out there, whenever I notice that fear is creeping in again, I just ask, am I more interested right now in impressing people or looking good than I am about making an impact? And if I'm realizing that my intentions are focused in the wrong direction, it's like the fastest course correction for me. And that has helped me so much. So yes, the more people you impact, it's going to open you up to way more people who will not like what you are doing. But just remember, at the end of the day, this is not about you. And what I really want you to know is that there are incredible blessings, ones that you cannot even imagine, waiting for you on the other side of this fear. And I don't want you to allow this fear of criticism to stop you from making the impact that you're meant to make and from experiencing the blessings that you are going to experience. So I don't think that this fear of criticism ever really goes away, and the critics sure don't. At least for me, my experience has been that the fear just hasn't ever fully gone away. But what I can share is that the more I've leaned into my purpose and experienced the impact that it can make, like seeing the message of Powerhouse Women translated into another language in another country, the more this fear of criticism or any criticism that comes our way just fades into the background. So I would really love to know, what is the fear of criticism stopping you from doing right now? Maybe you resonate with what I was saying about playing at 60% when you know you're meant for more. And I really encourage you to plug in to the Powerhouse Women community on Facebook and share it. Share it in that private community. Share it with your girl gang, because we have your back. And the world needs what you have to offer. But remember that you are not meant to do this alone.